order at 7:06. So first up, approval of last month's minutes. I just wanted to pull them back up. I skimmed over when I got them and I did not see any needed corrections. Did anyone else see anything? And hi, Katie. Anything else off from the minutes last month? Perfect. Okay, do we have a motion to approve? Thanks. And second? A second. Great. And I can go ahead and sign. Okay, there you go. Okay, no members of the public, so we can go ahead and move on. And we have a couple of larger agenda items today, so I was hoping just to jump right into them. If that's all right with everyone, and we'll forgo the question this week. Sorry, I'm trying to connect, obviously, and I'm having a hard time.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time too.
Okay. I'm going to use my phone as a hotspot. Okay, so the first, and I'm saying this without looking at my notes, so I might get names wrong now. But the first order of new business is a board membership update, and I wanted to tell you all about some membership changes for the board. So we did have, we had one member roll off of the board before that term was up. So we are short a member now. That was due to some personal reasons, including moving outside of the city limits. So what that means is we're going to be running a member short until fall. We are going to be holding, I won't be here, but everyone else will be holding another election. There'll be, the spot will be open in the fall, which will be the next time that council, or that the city hires appoints, approves new members.
So there's 2 times a year that the city does that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And if we had a full board, we wouldn't, have an open seat.
Okay.
So I did want to also share that Katie and I interviewed the candidate Nicole for one of the 2 open positions, and we sent off a recommendation in support of that candidate for one of the seats to City Council, I believe this week. Is that right, Tracy? Last week was it's Monday today. End of last week. So and then she'll be a great addition. So there still is a formal interview with City Council. Those are very quick, about 5 minutes, and then that position will start. My understanding is, and anyone jump in if I'm incorrect, that it will start after next month, that those positions will be approved in June, and then that person would hop on in July. One of the things that does is it does change the quorum for the meetings, just being a member short. That's just something to pay attention to in the next few months, because we always have to have the majority here to open the meeting, and so we would need 3 board members to hold a meeting. So if more than 2 are absent, we're not able to move forward the meeting. And Katie, please feel free to jump in, because thank you for being there as well. Yeah, Kat.
So we'll be starting in July then?
Yes. If approved by City Council, it should be starting in July. So we will have 4 people for this month, next month, hopefully July, probably July, and then hopefully get a 5th person in the fall.
And there's no way to do like a special election or something?
No, I think they're pretty scheduled with the rest. Okay, and I'm seeing nods from Susie. Okay, any other questions or discussion.
I'm sorry, Samantha.
Yeah.
If this was said, I didn't hear it said out loud.
Yeah.
Rihanna is not on the board anymore.
Yeah, sorry. I was probably mumbling. Rihanna is not on the board.
Process of elimination.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Rihanna has rolled off. Rolled off is the wrong word. Rihanna has unfortunately had to step down. That's
So
the
the
right word.
2 openings,
Yep.
that is including the one that she's vacated?
Yep.
Okay.
And the timing was such that we didn't have a surplus of candidates anyway, but the timing was such that it wasn't like,
There was one.
yeah.
There was one candidate, okay.
And the timing was such that it was, like I don't think it would have worked anyway. So,
Totally.
so
How do we recruit or advertise for these openings, or how does the city do that?
so I think it's the city does it. I really hope that I happen to, and I guess this is new, Susie. I originally learned about this just by like looking for a volunteer opportunity, and so I thought like let me look at the city website and then the city boards, and there happened to be one. So I think it personally would be great if like there was more awareness of these types of roles, but I know that's difficult, like with any type of raising awareness in volunteer positions.
I mean, they push it out on their city Instagram, the Facebook page, so I've seen it on social media, but I also follow those their sites or their pages. So
Susie, I know that this is a slightly different circumstance because there were four open seats for the Longmont Housing Authority Board, but I did see an advertisement for a paid advertisement for that on the Longmont Leader. So I am wondering if the city does ever do paid advertising for open seats where they're kind of deficient during the fall recruitment, if the library can just be included in any advertising, paid advertising outside of kind of the normal channels.
because the Longmont Housing Authority is us. We are.
Yeah, but the authority, the board, the advisory board for the Longmont Housing Authority. They had so many open seats. I don't know how it's going, but there were so many that I saw an advertisement for it on the Leader.
I'll ask who put that up there and see if that's something we could do for all of us.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And I don't know if this is possible as well, but I think even just like a physical flyer in the library for this specific one might draw. Because I mean, it's frequent library patrons are who are interested.
Yeah.
So just wanted to share that.
We can even put it on our digital.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That we put programs on, it could be one of those for the team.
That'd be
It's
great.
not a problem.
I wonder if letting people know that you can attend via Zoom would be helpful. I don't know if that's out there, but
Well, I
it
think
makes it much more doable for me.
yeah, I think that's a great idea. It's somewhat tricky because we need to make sure the meetings are open to the public. So we've been doing that in a hybrid manner, and I hope we continue. But I think it's a little trickier to communicate that maybe.
Right.
It is a little tricky because the meetings are officially in person, but we are given the flexibility to offer a hybrid version. So I don't know if we can really sell it on that. It could become a virtual only meeting. That's something the board could decide.
Yeah, that might be worth looking at.
Would the public attend virtually then also?
They can, in that form, if it's a virtual only meeting, yes.
Right, yeah.
And so it's structured a little bit different. I mean, it would look the same like it does now, but the Zoom, the public would be able to join the Zoom meeting at a certain period of time at the beginning of the meeting.
Right, yeah.
And have that opportunity, plus it gets recorded that way.
Right.
So it adds a couple steps, but it's,
Yeah, we haven't talked about
yeah. I mean, that was the way everyone was doing it
that. Yeah.
before the olden COVID days.
Yeah, that might be something to consider doing pure
I know.
No, why is that?
Any other questions or points to raise for that one?
I just have a question. I think there was some confusion about my term, when I will term out. Remember we were talking about it last time?
Tracy can look that up either during this meeting or immediately after. She has that info, I'm pretty sure.
Thanks, Tracy.
Especially given the little confusion that you went through.
Right.
Just
That's why I
minor
want to make
confusion.
sure, because I
Yeah.
came in as a through person, right? And so there's like a little bit of a stagger.
Yeah, and that's what happens when they're like, whenever in the fall, if someone applies and fills Rihanna's position, it'll fill that term. So if like their person's up in a year, then that new person is up in a year. That's just the way it works. But a normal new person is what?
3.
3 years.
I want to say 3, but Tracy, let me know if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
3 terms?
3 years, and you can do 2 consecutive.
2, no more than 2 terms.
And then you have to have a year off in between. So obviously Cynthia will be back in a year.
Dismiss everyone.
So I'm pretty sure I started in 2018, so I feel like I could be getting close to 6 years. That's why.
So Catherine, your recent term started in 2023 in July, from what we have records of, and it ends in 2026, June 2026. So you still have 2 years.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that's going to end up being more than 6 years, but
Mine was 2, Catherine.
okay.
And I think it was I don't think it was supposed to be, but because I came in on a temporary, like on somebody had rotated off and had a year left, and then COVID, I
It's all
think,
right.
really missed it.
Catherine, I mean, you'll leave the board when we tell you to leave.
Yeah.
The door will be locked one day.
Okay. I'm surprised
That's a
you
joke
haven't
for the
yet.
public.
I mean,
Just-
Yes.
It's a joke. Forgot we're on.
Oh my
I
gosh.
don't know why I do something like
Other questions or discussion points? Okay, this leads us into our next item of business, and I'm really hoping we can do this today. But if need be, I know Kat won't be here next month. If need be, I will be here next month, and we could officially hold election. But what I'm hoping is that we can have a conversation, because I know I've talked to everyone individually, but I'm hoping we can have a conversation, and of course, if anyone wants to jump in and volunteer right away for chair or Friends of the Longmont Library liaison position. But we do need to hold board elections, and we've talked about this as well. We talked about it last month. And so we need to elect a chair, we need to elect a vice chair, and we need to elect a Friends liaison. And so I'm going to pause just in case anyone wants to jump in right now. Okay, I thought that would be a pause with no with no jumping in. Wait, so I think a couple of things I want to share. The chair position, first of all, the main duties are, of course, presiding over and I'm actually reading this from the bylaws, presiding over meetings of the board, calling special meetings in accordance with the bylaws, which has never happened since I've been on the board, but it could. Signing documents and seeing that all actions of the board are properly taken. Realistically, what that means is running these meetings, and then I think it's very helpful to meet with the library director a week before to discuss the agenda items and anything that's come up in the last month. That does also involve attending city council meetings occasionally, but we've all really taken a turn on that. Thanks again, Jamie, for presenting the annual report last month. So I think we're all pretty aware of what that looks like. The duties of the vice chair are during the absence, disability, or disqualification of the chair, the vice chair shall exercise or perform all duties and be subject to responsibilities. The Friends of the Longmont Library liaison position are much more amorphous. But Jamie's done a great job really building that relationship. Previously, for anyone who's new, we had tried a kind of rotating schedule of having someone from the board attend a meeting. That did not work. That also was interrupted somewhat by COVID. But it's been really great, I think, to have a single person in that role. And so, Jamie, if you don't mind, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit because I know we're all very busy, and I know these are volunteer positions. And so I'm trying to think of ways that we could lessen any sort of time load. And so I'm wondering if you have any ideas for that.
I do, because
Perfect. Go for it.
I first of all, I enjoy that role very much. I probably personally choose to put more time into it than the role really requires, because I also volunteer with them.
Right.
But I have been thinking for the past year, is this sort of the connection that makes the most sense? In other words, having a representative from this board attend their monthly meetings, their board's monthly meetings. I don't think that it is. It feels very one-sided, and I often feel, aside from, again, my personal interest in volunteering with that work, duplicative, especially if John's there. Not to throw any shade your way, but, sometimes I'm there just saying what happened in this meeting, and then I come here and tell you what happened in that meeting. So is it in the bylaws that this has to be, okay?
No, it is not. It's actually the three roles, the roles that are described in the bylaws are the chair and the vice chair. The full role is under the category of other appointees. The board reserves the right to appoint members to other specialized roles as they deem fit. So we have, I think what matters is that relationship, but we have, what that looks like, we have room. What?
So 3 ideas that might feel more efficient.
Right.
Is one, to switch off not who attends the meetings, but perhaps someone from the Friends Board can attend this meeting, like 1 month, and then someone from this board attends that meeting. So it's an automatic 50% reduction in meetings for whoever represents the advisory board. And it gives, in my opinion, would give the Friends Board a little bit more of a taste or a window into how we operate, and particularly how we structure our meetings, which I find to be very comforting and dependable. Nice. Second idea would be to question whether regular meeting attendance is necessary to keep the 2 groups sort of aligned, or if there is some other mechanism of communication, whether it's a reward or I haven't thought through the details, but that has been a question. Is it necessary to attend in person? Is it necessary to attend every month? Because again, I feel like that relationship between the 2 groups is an essential one. So I would really hate to see that fall away. And then the third idea is, would this board consider, and would their board consider, a joint meeting quarterly that would have, between the 2 groups, hash out somewhat of a template for what the agenda for those meetings, and maybe it's only part of the meeting, but that would be interesting to have many voices represented in this space, and talk about where your work intersects and how we can both together support the mission of the library.
Thanks so much, Jamie. I have some thoughts. I've also been thinking about this, obviously. And so, Katie, Catherine, I know that I've thrown this out there. So I'm interested if you have any thoughts, but if not, please don't be concerned because this is very last minute. And then, John, I'd also love to hear your thoughts as well. I was thinking somewhat in a similar fashion, but I was actually thinking with the chair and the liaison want to meet for a half-hour meeting quarterly. But I like the idea of both boards coming together. There's, I think, some logistical stuff, such as our meetings need to be open to the public. They need to be advertised within a certain amount of time and so on. So they would have to be all right with that. My understanding is that our meetings are more constrained by the nature of what we do, who we are, where theirs is not as a nonprofit, I'm forgetting the numbers right now, organization. But I also really like inviting them, and I'd be as a member of the public, but making sure, knowing that they are welcome. And maybe we could even do that strategically. Maybe part of this person's role could be to keep a lookout on the agenda and share anything that might be of interest to the friends. But let me pause for a moment. And Catherine, Katie, any thoughts that y'all have that are coming to mind on this?
I mean, I'm just really grateful for everything Jamie has done to build that rapport, and I guess, you know, it seems like it's been fruitful, and it's awesome that you're willing to keep volunteering with them. I would be in favor of anything that you think would work, since you know so much better kind of both sides of the picture here. I think, obviously, they're always welcome to join us, but if you think it could work with less contact, or I just don't know if making an extra meeting is more trouble or less trouble, you know, or whoever does it. I have not ever served in that capacity, so I can't really speak to it. But I defer to you all who have done it, you know.
Thanks. Katie, any thoughts come into your mind right away? Oh, you're muted.
Not sure about that. I actually like the idea of just a one-on-one session quarterly. I don't know how that feels for Jamie though, having done it, because certainly they're picking the person who is doing that, just like we're picking the person who is doing that. And I don't know if that would feel like it would restrict it, but certainly if it's one-on-one, in theory, the meeting should be able to be much more time managed because it's just two people. But on the flip side, because it's just two people, the flow of ideas might not be as great.
Yeah, just to give you. Okay, let's try this. Yeah, I don't know. I bet Kevin does a good point that does create extra meetings. Perhaps I really want to simplify, not complicate. I have a tendency to complicate whenever I come up with ideas. I know that's my natural tendency. Okay, so we have a couple options, and I want to ask the three of y'all what you think. Well, actually, first, John, do you have any input on this? What would be any of these ideas that you think would work well in terms of our relationship with the friends?
I think, Jamie made a good point before. I'm at the friends meetings as well. I think as far as managing individual time, it's good to have a board representative there, I suppose, but also maybe not every month. I don't know if that's, I do like the idea of a joint, like whether it's quarterly or whatever. I think you're right, because of the board logistics, like if we have more than two people, it's a meeting, but, that could maybe serve as, that's how that liaison role is done, just more at a group level rather than this one person going back and forth. So the in between can be myself or Tracy for that matter, because we're both there, you know, but maybe that kind of joint effort every now and then, you know. Or just invite them to a standing board meeting.
Just to be clear, when I suggested a joint meeting, I imagined that it would be one of the ones that we already have scheduled.
Yeah, that would make
just
sense.
be-
Then you're not creating a separate meeting. That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, so you kind of have this official invite of Friends Board to come to whatever meeting of this that already exists, you know, and then essentially they're there, sure, they're there as Friends Board, but they're really there as public, right? So.
And maybe.
Well, but
Go for it.
with the fact that they would have to be there as public invited to be heard, are there similar constraints like with city council meetings that they can only speak for 3 minutes, or are they allowed to how does that work with somebody showing up from the public
So
to our meetings?
I think, in my understanding, is that we do have leeway with this. And so we have a section public invited to be heard, but I don't think there's anything also preventing us from putting an agenda item that is something like Friends updates or board updates for the Friends. So I think it could easily be during public invited to be heard, but also a separate agenda item.
Yeah, I think that would be better than anything during the public invited to be heard section, just in case we were ever to have to put constraints on the amount of time the public can speak. We wouldn't want to have to blanket the Friends into that same category.
Correct.
Do we want to move forward with whoever the Friends representative will be for next year? That's, first of all, some of these details can be worked out a little bit, but that we will follow a less time-intensive model and that we will move forward with inviting them to quarterly or, I think in semesters, or like biannual meetings. And then whoever this position might also just keep an eye out for anything that really pertains to the Friends and share agenda items or minutes, as that makes sense. Does that seem like less of a time commitment to everyone in a healthy way?
I think so. I guess I also just don't know the people on the Friends committee, and is this going to come across as any kind of a slight?
I don't believe so, and in fact, I would be in favor of not deciding on the specific schedule just yet, because on Wednesday is the next Friends Board meeting, and I would be interested in hearing from them what feels like the right frequency and context.
Okay.
Jamie, so when are Friends meetings?
They are the third Wednesday of the month. So they.
At what time?
Fourth Wednesday, I'm sorry, thank you.
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Okay.
for 1.5 hours.
1.5 at most,
Yeah, they're pretty
from my
short.
experience.
But I feel like we're typically, like after the Friends meeting, you have a long stretch before the next board meeting. So when I'm reporting on what happened in the last Friends meeting, it's a long time ago now.
So there's a number of reasons that refiguring our model might make sense, it sounds like. Okay, so then what I'd like to do is, if we have, and I'm not like officially asking yet, but if we have a volunteer for this position, that knowing that the model will follow something similar to what we've been discussed, what's been discussed, with the details to be finalized after in the coming weeks, basically, and also realizing that we do have the ability to refine and iterate as needed. Does that sound good to everyone? All right. Jamie, does that sound good to you?
Yes.
Okay, so I think, and I'm not, this is still an informal discussion, I have not made any sort of motion where we're not officially voting, This is more getting a temperature of the room. Knowing that, would anyone be interested in putting their name forward for either? I'm going to start with these two because these are the heavier lifts, for either the Friends Liaison or for the chair position. Thanks, Jamie. That's around it. Great either. Would you have a preference? Or just depends on kind of what?
I think they could be combined
Okay.
if needed.
All right.
If I had a preference, I don't know that I have a preference.
Right. Right. Anyone else interested in putting a name forward for the chair and or the Friends Liaison, realizing that if you don't have a separate Friends Liaison, those duties could be rolled up into the chair's duties.
That feels like a lot to put on the chair.
Yeah.
How many hours a month would you estimate the chair will?
Not
Outside of
nearly
the
as many
meetings.
you've been doing with the Friends. A couple. Like not a lot, because it's a weekly meeting with John.
Monthly.
Sorry, monthly meeting with John. Some
Yes, I know, that was, you were gonna resign.
Yeah.
It's really only like a half an hour. Making sure and communicating, emailing council, and whoever this position is, I'll go over this in detail, over coffee or something. Making sure that one's like ready for the meetings, reading over last month's meeting minutes, and then attending council meetings or kind of whatever makes sense out in the community. And so for some months, for many months, that's only this meeting and meeting with John, and maybe like a little bit of making sure Tracy gets the agenda items, just a few emails. Occasionally that's more, but it's not a huge time commitment. Yeah, Catherine.
So, I would be willing to do it, but I don't know. I'm trying to change the level of stress in my life. I'm retiring from teaching, and I'm going to school full time in the fall. And I just don't know if it's got to be less stressful than it has been.
Yeah, it is.
But I'm not going to know really until I do it in the fall. I mean, I'm going to be like subbing and stuff. You know what I mean? So I think my my anxiety about it is just this is like a period of a lot of transition for me. And so I almost wish that there was a way that we could sort of share the position or be like, hey, I kind of tacitly agree. I'll be the vice president until I know what my life is like, and then I could take over if it seems like I can handle more. But like, really, for me, it's more about just the mental space, not the hours.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just that I will not be able to keep all the balls in the air. Like you've been doing now. So just being really honest, like I would love to be able to do it, but it's only over the transition period.
I really.
For me,
Yeah.
For me, I feel too green to be chair. I can help. I could potentially help with the Friends Liaison, but I have to say that Wednesdays 6 are hard unless I can bring a 9-year-old in tow with me on occasion when I do them. So, but yes, having even just kind of like going to the Friends sale and helping there. If we can be flexible about what the liaison position looks like with them coming to some of our meetings, maybe me helping take shifts at book sales instead, or bringing a 9-year-old in tow on occasion, I can make that work with more flexibility. But I feel too green as far as all of the ins and outs of a city board, even an advisory board, to be chair.
Yeah, I think both of what y'all are saying makes a lot of sense. And I was really hoping by having an informal conversation rather than jumping straight into a more official election, we could do that. I don't want to put my voice forward too much because it doesn't matter, honestly, what I think. But it does seem like from this conversation that kind of three roles are emerging with people willing to fill those. A vice chair who may be able to be there when needed for the chair, a friends liaison, knowing there's some flexibility, and a chair role is kind of what I'm hearing everyone saying.
I'm
You
hearing,
look thoughtful, Jamie.
I am, I'm always thoughtful.
So what are your
and opinionated.
Yeah.
I'm also hearing that everyone who's talking has a willingness to step in and fill in. You know, if there's someone has to be somewhere else, which feels really lovely. I'm feeling that there's probably a good deal of flexibility among this group then to work with these positions moving forward, and hopefully we get on board another couple of members who can make it not feel like so what.
Great. And that's been my experience as well in this role and I really appreciate everyone's collaborative nature. Okay, so I think what we should do now is go ahead and vote for the chair and vice chair position. And my thought, but this is, y'all decide this, not me. My thought is to not vote for an official friends liaison, just knowing that the chair and kind of like on a volunteer basis. Let me rephrase this. I think we should vote for the chair. Chair and the vice chair. Do y'all want to vote for an official friends liaison position, or just leave it? My thought is to leave it open. But any dissenting opinions on that? Okay. Okay. So now,
I guess the only thing we need to know what's happening on Wednesday.
oh yes. Yes. So we do need someone to volunteer to go to the meeting. To this next meeting to share.
I'm already going
Okay.
to this week's meeting?
Yes.
Yes, I'm already committed to that.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. Okay, so then I'd like to go ahead and I guess call or move to elect a chair and vice chair. Does anyone want to put themselves forward or nominate someone else for the chair position?
How it goes?
Yeah.
We just talked about it.
Yeah, but we gotta have it official for the minutes.
I would be willing to serve as chair if the board would have.
Thanks. Okay, let's do a vote. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Okay. Would anyone like to nominate themselves or others for the vice chair position?
I would be willing to continue as the vice chair.
Thank you, Catherine. All in favor? Perfect. Okay, now we have our board elections. And Jamie and I can chat a little bit more if you would like. And I'll be here next meeting, but I think it makes sense to go ahead and have the new chair, if all right with the new chair, run next month's meeting. And I can be there as well to jump in as needed.
Wheels?
Yeah, if that works.
Gradual release.
Yep.
So it takes effect
Next month.
pretty quickly?
Yep.
Okay.
If that's all right.
It is?
We have agency on that. Okay, any other questions or discussion points before we move on to old business?
Jamie, I can add you to the invite that we have every month, which is a week before this meeting.
Oh,
And if that time doesn't work, let me know, but that you can kind of see how we are.
is it at this time?
It's earlier
It's
in the afternoon.
Okay.
Not early, what is it, 3 or 4 p.m.?
3.
The Tuesday prior.
Shooting for 3.
We should talk. There might be down the road.
It can change.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
okay.
we can find a time, that way you can kind of see how we pre-meet before this, and do agenda setting, that's all. We'll find it.
Okay.
Great. Once again, I really appreciate everyone's willingness to have this type of conversation. It doesn't always go so well, so thank you all. Yeah, I mean, not in Discord, but everyone, we've all been in meetings where that doesn't happen as easily. But other questions or discussion points before moving on? Okay, let's go ahead and move on to old business or other major item, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn it to John for a budget update.
All right. I'm going to share on the screen here. Those of you online, I assume you can see a spreadsheet in front of you. Okay. So I wanted to share with you this year's budget submission, which I was a little unclear of the timing of submission until this morning, so I had to submit this, well, for my purposes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not,
Okay.
yeah, don't
Not
worry.
sure. Okay.
So, the budget season starts in early May.
Yeah.
We have a limited time to kind of talk through this and put it into the budget system. My boss wanted it now because there's a number of layers, right? So if I request a position, then it gets submitted over to HR, and then it gets submitted to IT because they have to approve equipment. There's these things. So now it's all cycled back, and it's in there. However, and I can, out of this group, I think Katie might be the only one that wasn't here last year at this time, but effectively, it's really the same budget I put forward last year, because that budget, nothing happened with it. So what I'm showing you here, rather than going into the budget system and giving you everything, part of the process is to prioritize internally also, so that we can send that forward to my boss and my boss's boss and effectively the city manager before it gets to council. But it's good for council to see these things too, of what we have going. And the way the budgeting works here, so there's what you're seeing are what we call level 2 requests. There's another tab here called level 1. So level 1 requests are requests that we don't have control over, right? So like subscriptions we have to a software agreement, like there's always going to be maybe a 3 or 5% increase. Or think things like utility bills, which we don't have to worry about here, but that it's generally going to go up. You have no control over it, you have to pay it. And so you enter that in as a level 1 because it's not something you're trying to add to your budget, it's something you have to do to continue the service of those few things. That being said, I still needed to prioritize it. So that's what this reflects here. It's a little, don't get too hung up on the names. These are budget line item names, which don't mean much unless you're like me and you're in the deep into the nomenclature of all these things. But basically these are things like our ILS subscription, like major money that goes, which has an annual increase. And things like that. There's 2 of them here because one of them, this top line, I'll explain just for a second. As you know, we are a member of the Marmot Library Network now, which manages our ILS. We get great support from that, but they do many other things, including managing public computers. And so we have been talking with them about the idea of them managing our public computers upstairs, the lab, rather than doing it ourselves. Some advantages of that, there's a lot of advantages, but one is, well, of course, they manage it, so they manage the support through the third-party vendor, which does the print and time management software for the public computers. They take care of the security software that resets computers after a session, is all these things that we're doing currently, as well as licensing on the computers themselves, which comes up every now and then, and all of a sudden you're faced with, we have 45 plus public computers, and if you multiply that times, you need a new Windows license, and each one is $400 or $500. But part of the maintenance agreement would include that. So I entered this in as a level 1 because we have to have public computers, and we'll pay for it no matter what. And it looks like a $30,000 ask ask. In reality, it's kind of not, because we would actually let go of the contract we have with our vendor that provides the print and time management. So the 2-hour limits and the printing, all that's integrated. And the security software, deep freeze, if you ever heard of deep freeze, which resets computers, and a couple other things. Oh, and the licensing. So you drop the cost that we would have, and you pay for it for them to support it. Not to mention staff time on both library staff and city IT staff, of having to manage it. Plus, this takes it off of another big advantage of Marmot doing it is this would move all the public computers to existing on Marmot's network, not on the city's network. And that's huge for ETS, for IT, because then it removes a lot of things that are really sometimes get a little tricky to manage, right? The city's filtering is very restrictive as far as content that can be brought up online. And it's not to say Marmot's is not, but Marmot follows more closely with library standards, which follows SEPA. And so it's a little bit easier to manage that way. Right now we get a fair amount of requests. Someone's in our lab and they want to access something that's completely legitimate, but the city's filtering software blocks them. And so, that gets into a little of the weeds on this one, but I just wanted to kind of point out what that would mean at a cost. But again, it's, we could exist the way we are, but it won't cost much less than $30,000. So it would just be a % increase, which wouldn't be much less than that. But then we would still manage it, ETS would still manage it. There's a lot of factors. Happy to answer questions about that at some point. But and then there's some other things along here on the level 1, again, that are just percentage increases. Not as sexy. So the level 2, this is where we really are putting in requests for how to get this library moving more towards that preferred level of service, which I think everyone here can agree is really what we're striving towards. So all of these are the same as last year. There's nothing different. I did prioritize it. So staffing, you can see, is a big ask here, right? Our children's staff is severely understaffed compared to other departments within the library. And in fact, this summer, we're understaffed enough that I'm pulling money out of one of our funds to help support staffing so we can get through summer reading. That's obviously not sustainable to do. And this is summer. I mean, I'm doing it for the summer. Outreach I've talked about. I mean, if you don't know how important outreach is at this point from my perspective, I don't know what you've been hearing. But anyway, it's very important. So this outreach staff would be part-time staff. This is sort of a dollar amount. That would probably amount to 3 or 4 staff, depending on how many hours a week they work, but it's part-time. If that happens, our current coordinator, Lily, who you've seen plenty of reports from and you've seen the work she does, to supervise that many people would need to be reclassed into a position that can supervise more than one person. And then our CERC staff, the biggest staff makeup in the library as far as a department, circulation employs half of the staff of this total library. So we have 75 total people, and half of them are just doing circulation, right? Which includes account maintenance at the CERC desk, the info desk, and then people that you may not always see, shelvers. You probably do see them if you're here enough. Another position we have called pages, which also do shelving. They work on the desk, and they also pull holds for other libraries. A lot of work goes into CERC. Always understaffed. They consistently go over budget every year. And that's just working the minimum. And the only reason we survive that is sometimes we have cost savings elsewhere because we're good with our money. And then you get into other areas. So I don't know if I'm going to go through all 27, but Databases, this would get us more to spending on digital resources like a library of this size would normally spend. So we could add other streaming services that, we don't have any streaming services, all we have is ebooks and databases. High demand things that we should be providing for a population of over 100,000 people. Sitting next to me is Tracy, who has been doing the work of an administrative analyst for at least since I've been here, if not more. So this is one of the higher top priorities here, to put Tracy into a position that she's already been working. And then we get into, it's within, so there's kind of two things here. We have a supplies line item and a professional contracted services line. Between the two, these two increases really, and I've tried to describe this in the title, but much more in the description, which you're not seeing. This is what would give us our programming budget, which we've never had.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? So
Right.
the stuff that the Friends pays for. And so this is duplicated right below in children's. And so it's two separate things because you have the supplies part, so think children's, that's a lot of materials and things when they have crafts or anything that supports a program. Professional contractor would be hiring, right? So performers or maybe even an author, of some sort, but basically between the two. So with adult, we're looking at 12,000, and with children's we're looking at a little over 20,000, which is in line with about what they spend currently on programming. And I say what they spend, what I mean is what the Friends contribute to that programming. Professional development I've talked about. We have, right now, just to give you a sense, I'm asking for 16,000, which would get us up to about 20,000 professional development dollars, meaning we only have 5 right now. And so, as you know, the Friends generously supported some staff going to the Public Library Association. I mean, that alone, and that was sending 5 staff. I mean, in a normal budget year, if I had my own budget for it, I might send 2 or 3.
Okay.
Because that adds up. But even that I could have afforded, and I still would have had 10,000 for other professional development. So huge deal. Collection increases, again, to get us to preferred level of service, but also to account for the fact that we're doing pre-processing and having shelf-ready materials, which comes at a cost, which we have never budgeted for because we didn't do it. That's kind of along here, and then you get into more outreach. Again, the outreach similar to the other, to have their own programming budget. So between supplies and professional services, I think that would allow outreach to have their own supplies and to bring in other performers, which they do now. Again, support through the Friends. Adding a full-time position to outreach, as well as the part-time that I indicated way up here. It's hard to prioritize this, by the way. This is a little nominal, but I would like us to have more options for when we're out and about, so that we have common, just like other departments do. They have T-shirts and hats, and I've managed that for what we have now as a library. I've just found money to do it here and there, but it's not consistent. And then I asked for this last year. And so this is probably, in my mind, more realistic of what I think could be accomplished in the shorter term, as opposed to a full-blown $30-some million branch library. A storefront might be leasing space, but we still need to staff it. And what does that include? So you have different costs here. So staffing are along here, and some IT needs. The general storefront library, that includes leasing the space somewhere and other operational costs. If that were ever to come to fruition through our budget, I would anticipate this being something that would exist in the north end of Longmont, somewhere which I consistently hear is where we need library services. And that kind of gets you through, and then we have 2 vans, one that was support said storefront library so we can get materials back and forth. And then a van for outreach specifically, although this, which is not showing up on my spreadsheet here, this actually wouldn't be impacted by the budget. I have always intended to pay for this out of our Mosher fund to get that, although the ongoing cost would be out of our regular budget. So there's actually no one-time budgetary impact on that as far as the city goes, because I already have the funds for it. So that kind of gets you through all these.
In going back to the increasing I think it was the children's books.
Yeah.
There's one example that came up that said in ongoing expenses, maybe it was, right over there. So children's books increase.
Yeah.
So you have it listed as ongoing.
Correct.
So is that, tell me more, because I was envisioning it's just you're purchasing books.
Yeah, ongoing means if this were approved, this amount, that means every year going forward, that's my new budget for children's materials.
Okay.
Until
So
I
would
ask
you
for
be
more.
circulating out old books and then bringing you in? Or
Well, we always do.
You always do, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there an easy way to see where those numbers are right now? In other words, like
What are
where
we
it says
spending now?
increase, to see how much of an increase it constitutes.
Yeah, I mean, there's not an easy way here in the moment in this meeting, but I can tell you, like with children's books, what we spend. It's not. So asking 130,000 increase, we're spending not even half of this currently.
Okay, so here I am wondering like, is that like a 50% increce?
Yeah, it's.
But to this,
I know what you mean.
it's
Yeah,
more than.
it's more than that.
It's like doubling or even potentially more
Correct.
than that.
And that's not true in every single line here, but with something, it just depends what you're looking at.
So like, what I wish that I could see at a glance with this type of document is like, I know that you've put them in order of priority.
Yeah.
What's the
Might be
current
the
budget?
same thing. Like where is it really just the most underfunded, right? The gap between where we should be and where we are. But that probably aligns with your priorities, right?
Yeah,
Somewhat.
I mean, it's a little tricky in some way with the priority. This exercise I didn't like at all.
Well, and some of these, you don't
because
have.
everything's priority one.
Yeah.
I mean, like how do I differentiate? But it's just.
And you have some things on there that there's no money allocated for it so far.
Right,
Like the
right.
branch storefront.
Yeah, the
library,
the
that's
storefront.
zero
There's
right now.
nothing.
Yeah.
For the new outreach library, I'm assuming some of the outreach and programming, because if there is you don't have the funds for it.
There's
now.
no outreach funding, period. So that's all 100%.
Yeah.
There's nothing. There's no programming, so all the supplies and contracted, that's 100%. We have zero.
John, you have, I'm trying to remember which line it was, so you have the line 14 or number 12 in the ranking. Adult materials collection increase, is that print?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a separate ebooks.
Right below it.
Right below. Yeah.
And I'll just add some context. In my understanding, and John, let me know if I'm wrong, I don't know another public library around who does not provide streaming services of some sort. Like that's really, like a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, and once again, I do not have a background in public libraries, seems to be very common in other libraries. So these are not
Correct.
out of the blue. And I think that's something that we want to communicate as a board in our communication with council.
Yeah.
And just to go back quickly to the level 1 request, and you might have, but I just want to, if anyone doesn't know, ILS is for Integrated Library System, which is like the software that runs everything. Like,
No, without it, we
like
can't
there's no,
function.
yeah. So it's so, I mean, you can't function without a lot of things, but like you literally can't check out, but like it's so necessary. Other questions and comments for John? Okay, so our role as a board, in my mind, this has been submitted. Thanks for sharing in this granularity, John. We have the decision whether or not we support this budget, and which I do. But we need to discuss that as a group and vote on it. And then we want to communicate that to council as well. So let's go ahead and first decide as a group, how we support this budget. Then we can talk a little bit more about communicating that to council. So one second, I'm pulling up my notes from last year because I want to use similar language. I lost.
Can you go off the spreadsheet screen? That's a weird one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I can do it. I just want to make sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong, so you're requesting to use some of our, I don't know which of our outside funds it was, just to cover like a summer temporary position, was that what I heard?
It was when we voted on. So we went through the process, I want to say 2 or 3 meetings ago.
Yeah, I had put forward to the board we have a fund called the Mosher Fund, which is the name of the family that put that for this library, and we're allowed to spend on their interest. So yeah, it was 2 or 3 meetings ago I put forward to spend it on a couple of things. One was to support summer reading, and that will be in the form of additional staffing hours to support it. And then the other, unrelated to that, but that was to support our staff in service day that we just had Friday, and I brought in 2 trainers, so it will pay for those trainers for that.
Any other points of clarification? Okay, then I move that we vote in support of the budget request put forward for for the 2025 year. As shown.
Awareness is awesome.
Okay, so I move that we vote. I move that we vote in support of the 2025 budget. Any second? Thanks, Jamie. Seconded. All in favor? Okay, so we are. Wait, I don't need to vote because I put it forward. Okay, we have now voted unanimously in support of this budget request. So what we have done, so now that's step 1. Step 2 is we need to communicate in our role as an advisory board. Part of our annual duties are to review and share recommendations with council related to the budget. Last year, we emailed council and we said that in keeping with our primary functions and duties, the board reviewed the library's annual budget request and unanimously voted in support of the request that the library will be putting forward. And then we pulled out, I pulled out like a few specifics to mention, and we said, although we are in support of the entire budget proposal, I would like to mention a few specifics.
Yes.
Okay.
So I would like to follow that similar communication unless anyone else would like to see me do that a different way. Okay, so what I heard, the notes I took, and everyone feel free to jump in. The notes I took that were most important, importance for level 1 requests to be fulfilled to allow for subscription increases and updates to the ILS to be in line with the Marmot Consortium. I hope I got that right in a nutshell. We are, the next one I pulled out from hearing John speak, increase to staff wages, including temporary for circulation and children's and teens, as well. And then I have a separate item for the outreach. Increase to database, to the database budget to provide materials such as streaming services, promotion for the administrative assistant, reclassing the bilingual outreach manager to better share the broad range of services, materials, and supports offered by the library, as well as adding additional part-time and full-time staff for outreach. Increase to professional and contracted services, and professional development, and then last of all, increase to print, or not to print, but increase to collections. I can repeat that. Those were the notes I took. I will wordsmith that to make it sound much better. But that is what I would like to send to council, that we have voted in support of the full budget, and these are some specifics we would like to call attention to. Does that sound good to everyone? Susie, is there a better way that we should be communicating that you know of?
So I think any communication, definitely CC Harold on.
Okay. And I do for all of them.
Okay, so if you haven't already.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
When you're wordsmithing, could you, it drives me crazy when somebody is doing work for which they aren't being paid. So not just a promotion for admin, but a promotion for someone who's already doing the work.
Yep. That's a great point. And when is the promotion to again, John?
From administrative assistant to administrative analyst.
Administrative analyst, thanks.
And the way I put this into the budget, by the way, it's more about the needs of the library and how that role needs to be in place to support the library, and the person in the admin role is the right one to have that. Sorry to talk to you about the third person while you're sleeping.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah, but I just want to be clear, I could, if it's just the nature of, I want to promote this person, that could be almost anyone here. This is a critical role in this library that's already been doing this job. And we don't function without it.
Okay, so critical for, I want to just expand a little bit on why it's critical in our communication. So critical just to support the overall function of the library.
Function of the library, and also our patrons. Because you get into areas of, like this room, meeting room management, fielding a lot of customer things that other staff don't do. There's many unknowns.
So I'm going to go ahead and say the specialized role of the administrative analyst is important to the overall function of the library and our patrons.
It feels very operational.
And for what it's worth, others in the city who have analyst roles are based, and it's hard to compare one-to-one because they're in different departments, but if you look at it at a higher level, that's the work that's being done now, and those people are already analysts. For more, there's a higher level.
Great, so unfortunately, I am not able to draft something and share it out over email. I also would like to send this out before the next meeting due to the timing that these submissions were just put forth. It seems to make sense to do it now. So unfortunately, that means I cannot share the final communication with you all as a group, because that would violate sunshine laws. So I'm just wanting to make sure it's okay with everyone. I will share what we voted on. I'm going to call out those specifics. specifics. Does anyone else have suggestions for things they would like to make sure I mention within that list? Yeah.
I wrote down pretty much the same things that you did. I was wondering about categorizing them slightly differently in order to accommodate more of the specific line items. So, and again, it's not up on, well, it's somewhere on the screen, but my notes were that the main buckets were staffing, professional and contracted services, and collection development. Outside of the level 2 asks, is that kind of true? Not everything falls into those 3, but the majority of the top of the list.
Staffing, I would couch professional and contracted service just as that's
Programming.
the programming.
But I want to say programming that stretches across those 3 departments. you
Yeah,
had programmed.
correct, yeah.
And then collection development, both physical and digital.
Correct.
I would like.
I think that would help.
Oh, okay. I would really like to call out outreach because I just think that is such a one that's been
You can.
we've asked for a lot.
And it still
Yes.
fits within staffing. It fits within all of them, so.
I think you can mention specifics too.
Yeah.
But when you hear the broader categories, at least to someone who's been kind of swimming in this for a year and change, it should ring a bell, right? This isn't a new position title or a new specific contract with a vendor that nobody else knows, right? It's like, no, this is what we are asking for to fill specific holes that you have heard about in various other ways. My other comment is also like a bit more on strategy in terms of, can we put in a sentence that that recommends to council not only approval of this budget and these specific line items, but to somehow elevate it a bit and say, like, to seriously consider any request that represents, you fill in the blank, a new need, a dire need, a high priority need, like, I don't know, I'm not at wordsmithing point either, but what I'm trying to grasp at is, this looks like a longish list. There's a lot of zeros and commas and things in there. It's a lot of money. The library did not get that money last year. The needs have not changed. And so can it be made clear somehow, without being obnoxious, that you're funding a gap? We're asking you to fill in a gap, not to add on and expand in cosmetic or frivolous ways. There are not enough staff.
Yeah, I think that's good. I'm saying, I'm writing on the term.
Do either of you have any better language words? I don't feel like I'm doing a good job.
No, I think
That's
the
right.
editing. Sorry.
Go for it, Patrick.
Oh, I was just saying, I think you're highlighting, and of course, I'm also thinking, like, how do we make this yet another opportunity to remind them of their obligations? I think one thing that
Katie, would you mind muting for a second?
Me?
Yeah, I think yours is echoing. It just echoed a bit. Perfect. Right, thanks.
Again, I don't know how to do this without some kind of a veiled threat, but basically, like, we're not going to keep using this money to, like, pay for things that should be covered by the city.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're going to do it this one time as a stopgap measure, but we're not going to keep stopgapping. like, services will be cut. Unless we don't really feel that, in which case, I guess we shouldn't say that. But if we just keep filling the gap all the time with these other funds and with making people do way more than they should for the money they earn, they're never gonna give us what we want them to give us, which is an appropriate level of funding.
I'm taking notes. Wait, so this needs our expecting once again, but wait, so I like the idea of Jamie's 3 buckets. I will order that list within them. We need to communicate that these are services and resources that are all local libraries have.
Yeah, that was what I was going to bring up too. Just that comment that you had made, that there's no other library around that doesn't offer these. And I checked while we were chatting, like DPS, it's not enough to have a library card. You have to have a library card and be a resident of Denver to access the streaming services. Because I feel like a lot of stopgap happens too, because in Colorado you can get library cards at any library, but I have a Denver library card and I cannot access their streaming services because I don't live there. Yes. So we are truly lacking these things. We can't just rely on Denver for them. We are truly lacking them.
That's a good point. I'm writing that down. Okay, so we're gonna mention the importance. We're gonna mention the larger context that these needs have not changed from last year. We are funding a gap of needed services due to the lack of budget from budget from 2024, and that these needs are not able to be filled by other funds or means such as have been used by the past. All right, other comments? Well, then I'm gonna write this up. Jamie is the incoming chair for next month. Since we're switching, I'd like to just send you what I'm writing. And if anyone else wants an individual copy, just let me know. Just please communicate only with me, because we don't want to be in violation of any sort of regulations. And then I'm going to be sharing this with all council members, as well as CCing on the city manager and assistant city manager. And also, I have previously CC'd on John's boss, Jeff, in the past as well, so I will continue to do that. Okay, other questions or discussion points on under the budget update under old business before we move on? Okay. Thank you all. These were, like I said, 2 lengthy agenda items, but we've gotten through them. And now let's go ahead and move on to reports and information items. And John, I'll hand it right back to you.
Yeah, just a couple things for director update. I wanted to just share with you. On Friday, we had our annual in-service day with staff, which I felt was really good. Haven't received all the feedback from staff yet. We always ask for feedback on it, but we did some pretty important topics. We had a 2-hour training with a social worker who comes from Illinois, who does a lot of this kind of work with libraries specifically on a trauma-informed approach to patron, what's it called? Trauma-informed approach to people. Anyway, I forgot the title of the presentation, but it was, I thought it was good. It was, and some of the staff that have told me felt that it was pretty valuable. As far as that whole concept is, I always couch it as really separating yourself from the person you're interacting with and knowing that, they call it trauma informed, but everyone comes to you with experiences on any level. And something you or someone else say may trigger something and lead to some sort of behavior or interaction that's not favorable, but how do you approach it to better And really, the reason I almost did this session is not so much working with patrons, but maybe yes it is, but it's more so how do you manage and take care of yourself when you have interactions like that, and tools for approaching. And there's some to-dos for me from that training. I think there's some of which she provides. I just need to kind of share it with staff, but it's sort of like checklists or quick, even like little mini scripts of like, if someone does this, you could say this, and I think that kind of stuff is meaningful for staff. So that was really good. And then the other big topic that we did on that day was in the EDI realm. We had a 2-hour session on allyship and microaggression. Well, microaggressions and allyship, I guess, which I thought was really good. I think the presenter was excellent. Really did a good job of explaining, first of all, what microaggressions are, how to recognize it, and then how we can support each other. And we certainly have had some incidents here, not from staff to staff necessarily, but certainly from patrons to staff. And what are we doing about that? And kind of trying to catch that in the moment, if we can, or at least so our staff who are experiencing it, knowing your coworkers, see that. So I thought those were very meaningful. And in general, I think the day was really good. And then I met with Sandy Cedar and my boss Jeff just last week. Sandy had done, and she's done this before, but she has some experience and background in doing strategic planning, and did an all-day strategic planning session at the museum last year, which Jeff, my boss, spoke very highly of. So I reached out to her and we met and shared some ideas of what I'm hoping to see. And so she's going to kind of think about that and give me a little bit of a proposal. I think that'd be great for this library. First of all, we need something. We need to kind of come up with our own direction, but guided with somebody else. I really liked her approach of how she does this. And so we'll see. I'll update the board more as that comes. We just had an initial meeting. I anticipate what that'll look like is with some core group of staff members, probably 10 to 12 people at most. We have a team that can easily do that as it stands, what we call our leadership team here, but I may rethink that a little, not to discount anyone there. I don't want it too big, but the leadership team isn't equally divided, so it's like I only have one person from children's on that team, but I have 3 people from circulation or tech services, so I feel like I need a little balance. But anyway, I'll follow up more on that. I'm looking forward to something like that. And then lastly, lastly, sorry, my notes are in the order that I just said that. So if you didn't see, state legislature actually revised the bill I brought up here before about sort of this, I keep couching it as ban on book banning, but that's not really what it is. But they did pass legislation. I would imagine, Catherine, you're well aware of this given your research, but that it was rewritten to be directed for public libraries. The original legislation, which failed in committee or didn't get through committee, was because it was trying to encompass both public and school libraries. And I think, in particular, with some public library director input and really talking with legislatures who were willing to listen, basically heard us say these are very 2 different institutions and they need their own legislation if that's going to happen. And whether anything happens with school libraries separately, I don't know, but the public library is done. One interesting note about that, however, is at least in a quick email dialogue with one of the city attorneys here that supports the library, the legislation specifically states in there that everything around that goes through, and I quote, library boards of trustees. And if you look around and get into library land, you are not a board of trustees. Right? You're an advisory board. And so in the city attorney's office opinion, this legislation wouldn't apply to this library. And that's not necessarily a bad thing in my mind. We already have a policy in place. I just revised it, and this board motion on what I put forward, it actually matches pretty closely what the legislation says anyway. I think the advantage that we have in doing that is outside of a board of trustee, if the legislation were to apply, it would skip the board, the advisory board, and council would become the board of trustee. And there's nothing to say anything about council. I just think the further removed you are from it, it's better. And it's better for council if we were to be a library that's bombarded with, requests for reconsideration challenges. That would fall on council, and I'm sure there's plenty of better things to do. So the library has managed it. We can continue to manage it. When I have received challenge letters or requests, I do bring them here. So I think our method works. Knock on wood, we don't face any of these things that some of other areas in this country have. But just to let you know, that did pass. And how it affects here, I feel like maybe nothing at the moment.
I think that's really, I mean, it sounds like it's out of our hands anyway, but I think that's really good because it also allows for a quicker response time to the patron. So like, I do think it keeps it as a patron-centered approach as is.
So, pending any questions or comments on those things, that's my director update.
Thanks, John. Questions or comments for John? And it looks like we have the
the bill is up.
the actual language.
Thanks,
Catherine.
Kevin. Yeah.
I just thought it'd be useful.
Yeah.
The only thing, John, that this bill does, it looks like, is that it protects librarians, right?
Yeah.
So our city doesn't have a policy that would protect you necessarily, but
It doesn't, and that's an advantage of the legislation. So library staff, like you've seen, and it's fortunately, it's not rampant throughout the country. But if you look at other states, certainly I think it's Arkansas or Alabama or both, where librarians can be criminalized for leaving a book that's considered inappropriate, and that's the exact word, and who's to judge that? But you can be fired or charged or both.
you could be criminally charged, yeah. But there's currently a stay that doesn't help that much, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that law is, yeah.
Yeah, I think, I think where we are here in general in Colorado, I mean, there's parts of Colorado that are probably a little closer to that, but I feel Longmont's a lot further away from that and is much more, the citizenship here is interested in going down that path, or at least, not in large numbers that are informing that kind of direction, I guess you would call it.
Great. Other questions or comments for John?
Will you just keep us abreast with the new policy if you end up, having any feedback or what your experience is with it?
Of course, yeah.
Great. Any updates? Jamie and Trinity, any updates from the friends that are friends to share at this time?
Yes. The most recent Mother's Day sale was right before Mother's Day. Grossed over $11,000, which is a new record for the Friends. At least for a long, long time. I did not see that was, for the entire term of their existence, which is 40 years. 40 years this year. But certainly in the memory of anyone who is currently involved, it is a record. There were a couple of things, probably many factors that contributed to that, but they are getting better with their communications and their own outreach and advertising, building more momentum, word of mouth, putting up more signage, really highlighting. I think it's maybe only the past 2 sales where it's felt like a really obvious push to bring awareness to what the funds are used for and what the sale is for and what it supports. So I don't know if this was like my 5th or 6th sale that I volunteered at, and in those early sales, I would hear frequently that patrons didn't understand the difference between us and the employed staff. People thought all of the books in the sale were from the library discards. They thought the money was, for extras, and that maybe it was augmenting parts of the library budget that were, decent as is. So getting more direct in that messaging, mentioning the bill, many of the board members who work at the it's not a register, at the checkout table, they have talking points that they keep at the table, and everyone who does a shift at the table is encouraged to weave in those talking points about the work of the Friends, so it helps bring awareness to the library's current situation.
Oh, I think you're echoing.
That's me?
Yeah.
So it brings...
I was just gonna say that's a great idea,
Oh.
that there's a cheat sheet with talking points.
Yeah. That was Lois, one of the board secretary for the Friends. And it also brings awareness to what the Friends do, because that volunteer group also very much needs new membership, not just new membership to the Friends, but new board involvement, people who want to do some more of the heavy lifting. They have some significant roles that are expected to turn over in the next year. So having new people come in will be really, really helpful. And the last thing I will mention is that in addition to their signs and their talking points, they have put out a donation jar. And then depending on individual comfort level, I've sat next to volunteers who will just say, would you like to? They raised the price of the $5 bags, and the messaging around that I thought was pretty good. That it is, they've done the $5 bag sale the last day for a long time, and as the costs of the library and the things that the Friends fund, as those costs continue to rise, we have to raise our prices too in order to be able to give gifts of the same value to the library, have that same purchasing power. We need to raise our prices. And so it's a good cause, and you're doing something great for the library. And there were some grumbles, but no one really fought it or complained loudly, and many people bought an $8 bag. We made change, and those $2 went into the donation bucket. So I will be eager to hear on Wednesday night just a more detailed breakdown of that revenue and what we brought in donations, because I believe that that's counted separately. But it was in the high hundreds, I would guess. Just asking.
Questions or comments for Jamie? It's a really great update. I will also share that I told you all this, submitted the Friends for one of the Colorado Association of Library Awards. I really think that their efforts are so important and I want them to get that recognition. I'll make sure if they don't get that award this year, I'll make sure and pass along any materials. So if the board wants to next year, if they don't receive that recognition this year, those materials can be repurposed. Other comments or questions? All right, Susie, we'll ask you.
A lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
So so it's kind of nice because they printed these out for us since the TVs aren't working. So we can't show, we can't see on our computer screen the slideshow. So they printed it out, but then it made me realize, oh yeah, we're covering a lot of things. So we did go over, the introduction to the operating budget. I think something to keep in mind, as public, there are 2 ballot measures this fall that could have a negative impact to our property tax projections and sale tax, so the level of income that the city would receive. So, I still need to do some research. I wouldn't make a recommendation on whether or not to support or vote against, but definitely, do some research on that. And I think the other one, there was another one, Senate Bill 233. Depending on the analysis of the impacts to that, there's a 2.2 million that we have available in our general fund that may be available for use on ongoing, but they're, currently it's from the property tax revenue that, that it's to be used for one-time expenses. So we're kind of waiting to get the analysis from Senate Bill 233. Something else that the LMAC had come to present for us, and they had an ask for us of increasing their budget as well. And I think for them it was 50,000. I mean, they're not a huge, they're an advisory board, or so they're not, they don't have overhead or anything, but it was really around outreach. So in kind of thinking about that group, and I can share their slideshow, but I'm wondering if there's crossover even between the library and what they're doing, and maybe as a cost savings for what they're trying to accomplish, like some kind of coordination between the two. So what LMAC's doing, and I'll share with you. So, and they used to be
What is that abbreviation?
It is the Longmont Multicultural Action Committee. And so, yeah, here, and I'll share I'll pass that around, what they do. So really, they do a lot of stuff with the events, the organization of these events and outreach and marketing, as well as addressing, the microaggressions, discriminations that, that Longmont residents have faced. So really how to go about that. They've made recommendations towards council as far as, the kind of training that they recommend we should receive as well. So this was another executive summary, so I can pass that around too. So I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of coordinate efforts. That might be a good avenue. And especially since I'm hearing, and I have to laugh because I do negotiations for the school district. So when we have our finance team come in, do them, and so they come in and they just share everything that's going wrong, and then I hear Jim talk about it's the same thing. They've just been trying to be very conservative, as is their role. But you just kind of hear the sky's falling. So things that we have to watch out for. And so I think something that is way heavy on the mind is making sure that we are keeping in mind as far as staff compensation. Our philosophy is paying that market rate looking at that average, so we're paying our employees well. So we want to ensure that we can still, that is a priority, that we continue to do that. So I think that's something that they think about as we work through the budget as well. Some other things, we've been hearing a lot of news around the airport. Currently the airport. So currently they want to really put some restrictions as far as building around the flight path. And so there's this large oval that pretty much covers the entire western part of Longmont, where they really say, oh, you shouldn't build on there. Or, if you want grants and our federal funding, we don't want any liability in these spaces. So, we were kind of working through and trying to find a happy medium. And it seems like they are willing to negotiate looking at this it's a paddleboard type shape that's more narrow. Where really the building would be more restricted in that small section, but we would still have the building, kind of around. Because they really can't mandate that these are private properties and, we have our own codes. And so really essentially it's just, we would be willing to negotiate this area, this zone A, zone B, that's more like a paddleboard shape. And it's a real narrow sliver. But there are impacts to right away that we heard from some developers who are looking at property that maybe kind of cuts into that section. So we're kind of going back and forth. Nobody from the the federal agency came to say, well, why are we doing this? All of a sudden they just decided this is an issue and we need to adhere to it, otherwise we run the risk of losing federal grants and funding for the airport. So we invited them to come to a future council meeting so we can discuss this. So we did not make any decisions on this yet. We're waiting to hear. So for anyone who's interested in the library or airport business and that whole thing, that'll be coming up to a future agenda. So
Is it just for new building?
New building.
Okay.
New building. I think there is a section where there's some houses on Nelson Road. There's a development where a little corner of it is kind of cut into that paddleboard, that zone B section, but it's already been there. So we're not talking about removing homes or removing buildings. They just want us as future builds. They want us to really cut back on the development in that path of the airport. Yeah, and then, we got the air show is going to be in September. I believe September 14th is what's coming on. There are some training happening, so if you've seen more airplane activity, they did mention that they're doing the training for, the water, like fire. When there's forest fires, taking the airplanes out. So they're doing a lot of that. Going on right now. I think other things that let's see, I don't have to go over everything, but Vision Zero, the traffic safety, we did hear a report from the state or Boulder County and about the 287 corridor, especially south of Prospect. Further south, there's been a high number of fatalities, and it's ever growing. So they're looking at, putting some kind of guardrail or barrier in between the traffic, because the majority of accidents that are happening when cars go across the oncoming. Maybe they're on the phone, or they're tired, or they're drunk, but to have some kind of barrier that keeps them from crossing over. So that's something we'll be doing in collaboration with the state and the county to get that work done. And going from highest need, highest priority, and working down. So I think, and then, to go with what you all were talking about, the complaint form. So we did approve a city council ethics complaint form. So if a member of the community has a complaint against one of us on council, we actually have a platform for them to to file and submit a formal complaint. And we've never had anything like that before. I know people would come to city council and say, I have this complaint against so-and-so for this, but it was like, okay, thank you. And there was never anything that would follow that. So this one, and we've changed some language in our ethics that, what would warrant a frivolous one or what would be considered a viable. And, maybe the punishment might be, you're being excused from your meetings or, from the boards and commissions, you won't be allowed to participate in those or censored or, something to that degree. So depending on what the complaint is. We've also, every year we go through our licensing and code updates for alcohol, marijuana. There's been some push or some requests from the community to have hospitality licenses. So it would be, the one woman is a massage therapist, but to be able to use oils or creams that have the THC in them, you'd have to have a special license. So in order to have that, we'd have to adhere to that. And then another member of the community just wants a place to go and smoke weed. So yeah, we're kind of discussing that whole thing. There is a state statute that allows us to have. I think currently under our own city ordinances, we wouldn't be able to expand more than 4. So I can't imagine. We would go all the way, but that would include maybe a massage therapist who's using THC in the treatment or a social hospitality area. So that was interesting. We're just kind of going through those right now. So I don't know if you have any questions for me. Oh, and the other one is next Wednesday at 6 o'clock in the St. Vrain School District Boardroom. We are having a joint meeting, school district, school board. And I did add to the agenda to talk about the student ID program for a card. So I'm just gonna because I, get nowhere.
Would it help us?
You can come if you want. If there's questions, yeah. Sandy might ask you because it's library. I know anything that we put on the agenda and there's a department it pertains to, they usually have a representative staff person there.
So this is St. Vrain,
Yeah, our school board.
the school board,
Yes.
and city council.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Is Dawn gonna be there?
Yeah, oh, yeah. I think he was the first one that said yes. But,
29?
it is Wednesday. Is that the 29th?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so let's
Wednesday, the 29th at what time?
at 6 o'clock.
Where?
And it's showing up as being in the school board room. It's 395 Pratt Street or South Pratt Parkway.
Oh.
Do you know where that's at?
Yep.
Okay.
It's like right up the street from the whole city, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
fire station.
yeah.
And I'm assuming that's fully open to the public.
Oh, yes,
Right.
yeah.
Thank you for
Yeah.
putting that on there.
Yes, yes. Asked a few times and then finally I just made a formal motion and everybody voted on it.
Cool.
Can't get my calendar loaded. I think it's at 6. Maybe for today. I notice when I put my computer down, it kicks me off the internet.
Yep.
And I open it up, so I'm looking to get back on.
It's not an issue, it's a feature.
You're on a roll tonight. Okay, yes, 6 o'clock in the boardroom. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
Thanks so much for those updates.
Yeah.
Okay, our next agenda item, library question is the one I had that I was aware of was we've already discussed the state legislation. Anyone want to chime in anything else here? Great. Then our next agenda item is library board comments, and I would like to make a comment. I meant to make this earlier. We used to elect a secretary every year. And I think that's the hardest position hands down on any board. So I just want to thank Tracy again for taking notes and doing such a great job doing that. It's really relieved a lot from these responsibilities. Any other library board comments?
Well, just.
You might have to hold on, try again.
We don't have that position to use for hazing new members now, so it's kind of a flip side to that we should just acknowledge.
That's true. It used to go to the new member, which really meant you could get stuck right away. That was not the best way to handle it, probably. Okay, well, our next meeting is June 17th. Since we do have a smaller group, I know we will have one member out. So we just need to have 3 to have a quorum. So if anyone else is going to be out, please just email me when you know. And that way I can let Tracy know as well. Okay, otherwise we will adjourn at 8:57. Thank you all.